The UN Security Council remains locked in fierce negotiations as diplomats struggle to push forward a vote on boosting aid to Gaza. The United Nations is warning the entire Gazan population faces an imminent risk of famine, with more than 500,000 people facing catastrophic conditions. This latest draft resolution calls for urgent steps to immediately allow safe and unhindered humanitarian access, as well as the creation of conditions for a sustainable cessation of hostilities. It does not call for an immediate end to fighting. Another key sticking point is the question of aid. The draft text, which had initially demanded the use of all land, sea and air routes into and throughout Gaza, now calls for the use of all available routes for aid deliveries. And instead of the UN monitoring aid deliveries, the new text calls on the UN chief to assign a coordinator instead. While wrangling continues over the wording of the resolution, fighting in Gaza shows no signs of abating. Israeli forces have issued an evacuation order for residents of El Bureij in central Gaza, this to move south. But over in the south, airstrikes have been reported in the cities of Khan Yunis and Rafah, which have been amongst the latest flashpoints in an ongoing Israeli offensive. Ever more, Trent Murray joins us live from Tel Aviv. Trent, the U.S. earlier signaling it might be open to this draft resolution, the UN Security Council. Many delays now, which you have reported for us. What are the chances of this time, this vote actually clearing?
Well, I think what makes this time different is that for the first time, as you said, the United States is publicly saying that it is supportive now of the wording. And so I think that will make it quite crucial when it is brought to the UN Security Council floor later today in New York. We know, as you said, this was originally due to be voted on Monday, but we've had delay after delay as both sides here try to negotiate over the wording. What this ceasefire really focuses on, or the resolution, I should say, is surging humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip, because the UN is saying there are major shortages of food, water and medicine. And in the past couple of hours, we've heard the European Union echoing those concerns. They say their food security index within the Gaza Strip now shows 100% of the population is facing some form of hunger. Where things were getting caught up in the wording with this resolution was around the inspection of aid. Currently, Israel is inspecting all of the aid that goes into Gaza. They say that they're doing that and they want to retain that oversight in order to make sure weapons are not smuggled in. The original resolution called for the UN to take over exclusively that role, but we understand a middle ground has now been found somewhat between the two sides, in which the UN will appoint some form of coordinator on the ground, the eyes and ears of the Secretary-General, if you will, to make sure that that aid gets in. But even if it gets in, we do know actually getting it to the people remains very difficult, because there is heavy fighting on the ground and heavy airstrikes as well. Another busy 24 hours for the IDF, I should say. They have not let up with their air power campaign. Reported airstrikes in Rafah and also the Yabna refugee camp, which we know a number of civilians are still taking shelter in.
In fact, the IDF may be widening its offensive into central Gaza. What's the latest on that front?
That's right. Evacuation orders issued to around 5 neighbourhoods in central Gaza. That would indicate that the IDF is expanding its area of operations. It follows them saying that they have taken operational control of key areas around Gaza City, but they are also moving southbound towards Khan Yunis and Rafah, those areas where most of the people of the Gaza Strip are now taking shelter. The UN says 90% of them now have been displaced, or in other words, are homeless because of the heavy bombardment, and they have really evacuated to the south. So if fighting picks up there, we know the UN will also grow increasingly concerned. The Hamas One Health Ministry says 20,000 Palestinians have now died because of this fighting which shows no sign of letting up right now. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the IDF will continue to push forward to try and achieve his government's goals. And he said his message for Hamas is that they now have 2 options. Those options are to surrender or die.
Thanks for that. Trent Murray reporting from Tel Aviv.